There's a simple truth we often forget in our day-to-day lives. Not everything deserves your reaction. The moment you allow everything around you to affect your inner world, you give away your most powerful asset: control over yourself. We live in a reactive culture. Someone says something offensive online and we react. A colleague takes credit for our work and we get angry. Plans change unexpectedly and we spiral. But here's the thing: events don't create emotions. Our interpretations do. Your response is your responsibility. When you let small irritations shape your mood, or when you let criticism change your confidence, you're not just reacting, you're surrendering. That surrender may seem harmless in the moment, but over time, it teaches your mind a dangerous lesson: I am not in charge. Let's break this idea into something more practical. Imagine you're walking down the street and someone bumps into you. No apology, no acknowledgement. You can let that one action ruin your morning, or you can recognize it for what it was: just a moment. It says more about them than it ever will about you. That's the skill we need to learn: not avoidance, not numbness, but emotional clarity. The ability to recognize what matters and what doesn't, and to choose your response with intention. We have a limited emotional bandwidth. Every ounce of energy spent on things outside your control is energy you didn't invest in growth, in gratitude, in purpose. So when something happens that would normally upset you, pause and ask yourself, is this worth it? If the answer is no, let it go. Not because you're weak, but because you're focused. Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean we become cold or indifferent. It means we develop discipline. Emotional discipline, the kind that anchors you in storms and shields you from chaos. The kind that lets you stay kind when the world is cruel, calm when things go wrong, and committed when things get hard. When you don't let everything affect you, you don't become passive, you become powerful. So here's the challenge: guard your focus like it's treasure. Train your emotions like they're muscle. And when life throws you noise, be the quiet voice that says, not everything deserves my reaction. Because peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the ability to not let problems own you. 5 keynotes from the speech: your response is your responsibility. External events don't control your emotions unless you give them permission. Emotional discipline is a choice. Staying calm and clear is not about apathy, but about strength and intentional living. Reacting to everything weakens focus. Protect your energy by not investing in what you can't control. Inner peace comes from self-regulation. Real power is the ability to remain steady in the face of external chaos. Not everything deserves your reaction. The ability to choose what affects you is a mark of maturity and purpose. Your response is your responsibility. These 5 words hold more weight than most people realize. In a world filled with distractions, noise, and emotional triggers, the way we respond defines not just the quality of our relationships, but the trajectory of our personal growth. Too often, we fall into the trap of blaming our reactions on the circumstances around us. Someone insults us and we get angry. A deadline is missed and we lash out. Plans change and we spiral into anxiety. It feels natural to react, automatic even. But the truth is, we always have a choice. And that choice, when taken seriously, becomes the foundation of emotional maturity and personal freedom. When something negative happens, we typically direct our attention outward. We fixate on what the other person did wrong or on the injustice of the situation. We might say, he made me feel stupid, or she ruined my day. But the language itself reveals the illusion. No one can make you feel anything without your cooperation. There's a difference between what someone does and how you interpret it. Your mind assigns meaning, and that meaning shapes your reaction. If we start to take ownership of that process, if we learn to pause before reacting, we begin to reclaim the power we've been unconsciously giving away. Imagine 2 people are stuck in the same traffic jam. One of them is honking, cursing, slamming the steering wheel. The other is listening to music, perhaps making a phone call, calm and composed. The situation is identical. The response is not. Why? Because one person has decided that external events don't get to dictate their inner state. They've realized that their response is their choice, their responsibility. The traffic didn't create stress, it simply revealed it. In the same way, life doesn't create our emotions. Life gives us inputs, challenges, obstacles, feedback, and we decide how to process and respond to them. Taking responsibility for your responses doesn't mean ignoring emotions. It means acknowledging without being owned by them. Emotions are data, not commands. Anger, fear, sadness, they all carry useful information, but they don't have to control your actions. The problem begins when we react out of habit rather than intention. We say things we regret, we damage relationships, we abandon our goals, all because we gave into a temporary feeling. Responsibility begins the moment we decide to interrupt that cycle. It's the ability to feel an emotion and still choose a response aligned with who we want to be. We often admire people who stay calm under pressure. We call them grounded. wise, strong. But what we're really admiring is their ability to take responsibility for their reactions. They don't deny reality, but they don't surrender to it either. They create a space between stimulus and response. And in that space, they choose deliberately. That space is where self-leadership is born. You don't need a title or a platform to be a leader. You just need to lead yourself, especially in moments of difficulty. Taking responsibility for your responses also strengthens trust. People want to be around those who are emotionally stable, who can handle tension without exploding or withdrawing. When you own your reactions, you become reliable, not because life is easy for you, but because you've trained yourself to respond with purpose, not panic. You become the person others can count on in uncertain moments, not because you control the situation, but because you control yourself. This mindset also frees you from becoming a victim of your environment. If you believe others are responsible for how you feel, then you're always at the mercy of what they do. But when you internalize the idea that your response is your responsibility, you shift from helpless to empowered. You begin to influence outcomes rather than be shaped by them. You stop waiting for the world to change and start changing how you show up in it. The people who thrive aren't those who avoid stress or conflict. They're the ones who respond with clarity, calm, and consistency. They know that their peace, their energy, and their progress depend not on what happens to them, but on how they choose to meet it. They understand that life is unpredictable, but their mindset doesn't have to be. They live with intention, and that intention starts with owning every response, especially the ones that feel hardest to control. When you embrace the fact that your response is your responsibility, you begin to rewrite the rules of your life. You stop letting circumstances steal your focus. You stop letting people dictate your emotions. You start living from within, not in reaction to what's outside, but in alignment with what you stand for. And that shift, subtle but powerful, changes everything. Emotional discipline is a choice. It may not always feel like one, especially when emotions come rushing in like a flood, overwhelming our logic and hijacking our reactions. But that moment, the moment between stimulus and response, is where choice lives. It is in that gap where we either give our power away or take it back. Most people grow up believing that emotions are something that just happen to us. That anger, frustration, anxiety, or sadness are natural reactions that we have no control over. But while emotions are indeed natural, our reactions are not fixed, they're trained. They're patterns we reinforce over time. And those patterns can be rewired when we understand that discipline is not suppression, it's selection. Discipline isn't about pretending we don't feel anything. It's about deciding which emotions deserve our attention and which ones do not deserve our reaction. When someone says something disrespectful, it may trigger anger, but the disciplined mind pauses before acting on it. It asks, what's the best response in this situation? That pause, that millisecond of restraint, is where growth lies. It's the difference between adding fuel to a fire and letting it burn out on its own. Emotionally disciplined people are not emotionless, they're self-governing. They don't get dragged around by every feeling. Instead, they acknowledge emotions, interpret them, and then respond based on values, not impulses. There's a common misconception that emotional people are strong because they feel deeply. But real strength lies not in how deeply you feel. It lies in how clearly you think in the presence of strong emotions. That clarity doesn't happen by accident. It's cultivated over time through small acts of restraint and reflection. When you learn to sit with discomfort without acting on it, you teach your nervous system that not every spike of emotion requires a reaction. You begin to take ownership of your inner world instead of being ruled by it. Choosing emotional discipline also means choosing what gets your energy. Not every insult needs a response. Not every mistake needs self-punishment. Not every failure requires shame. Emotionally disciplined people understand the difference between reacting emotionally and responding intelligently. They are selective about what they allow to influence their state of mind. This doesn't mean they're robotic or detached. It means they've decided that their peace, focus, and character are too valuable to be disrupted by every emotional wave. Every day presents opportunities to practice this discipline. A delayed email can stir up impatience. A traffic jam can trigger rage. A harsh comment can light the flame of insecurity. But each of these moments is also an invitation to rise above instinct and choose integrity. You can snap or you can breathe. You can shut down or you can communicate. You can victimize yourself, or you can recalibrate and refocus. The world doesn't need more emotionally reactive people. It needs more emotionally aware people, those who can feel, process, and lead themselves and others through challenging moments with composure and conviction. Discipline is built through repetition. You don't become emotionally disciplined overnight. It's a muscle, and just like any muscle, it strengthens when it's used consistently. That means you'll get it wrong sometimes. You'll say something in anger. You'll shut down when you should speak up. That's okay. What matters is that you notice it, learn from it, and recommit to doing better next time. Every emotional misstep is a chance to train your awareness and refine your responses. Over time, what once felt like a struggle becomes second nature. What emotional discipline gives you more than anything else is freedom. Freedom from being controlled by the outside world. Freedom from regretful words. Freedom from emotional hangovers that derail your goals and relationships. It allows you to show up as the best version of yourself, even when the environment is working against you. That doesn't mean you won't feel things deeply. It just means you'll feel them wisely, with discernment, with purpose, and with enough space between emotion and action to ensure that you're responding, not reacting. In a world that rewards speed and stimulation, slowing down to examine your emotions takes courage. It's not flashy, it won't get applause, but it will change the way you lead life and love. It will make you a better parent, partner, friend, and professional. Because when you choose emotional discipline, you choose to live from principle, not pressure. You choose to respond in a way that reflects who you are, not what you feel in the heat of the moment. And that's a choice that builds character, resilience, and respect, both from others and, more importantly, from yourself. Reacting to everything weakens focus. It's one of the most overlooked reasons people struggle to stay consistent, productive, and mentally clear in today's world. We are constantly surrounded by stimuli, notifications, opinions, criticism, distractions, and noise from every direction. If you allow yourself to react to all of it, you will find your energy drained before your day even begins. Every time you react impulsively to something external, you give it a piece of your attention, and attention is your most valuable currency. The more you spend it on things that don't serve your purpose, the less of it you have for what actually matters. Focus isn't just about removing distractions, it's about managing reactions. Because distraction doesn't only come in the form of noise or clutter. It often comes in the form of emotional turbulence. When someone says something negative and you fixate on it, your mind spins. You replay the words, imagine confrontations, and burn hours on mental scenarios that lead nowhere. That's not focus, that's emotional distraction disguised as thinking. And the more often it happens, the more fragmented your inner world becomes. Your thoughts scatter, your priorities blur. You begin your day with clarity and end it with confusion, wondering where your time and energy went. When you react to everything, especially things beyond your control, you allow the outside world to govern your inner life. You may think you're being responsive or alert, but what you're actually doing is operating in defense mode. You're letting the world set the terms of your mental state. This constant shift in emotional gears takes a toll. It's not just tiring, it's disorienting. You never settle long enough into deep thinking, meaningful work, or peace of mind because you're always preparing for the next fire to put out, the next drama to engage with, or the next opinion to defend against. There's a reason highly focused people appear calm. It's not because their life is easier. It's because they've decided what gets their attention, and more importantly, what doesn't. They've trained themselves to differentiate between the urgent and the important. They've learned that reacting to everything, especially things that have no lasting consequence, is a form of self-sabotage, pulls them off their path. It tempts them into battles that don't need to be fought. They stay focused by being intentional, by choosing what deserves a response and what is best ignored. Emotional self-regulation is at the heart of sustained focus. If you let every comment, every disagreement, every unexpected twist disrupt your emotional state, then your goals will always take a backseat to your moods. You'll find yourself trying to be productive while nursing resentment. You'll try to be present with your family while replaying a conflict in your head. You'll attempt to move forward, but your mind will keep circling around the same emotional traps. The cost of reacting to everything is not only wasted time, it's fragmented energy, and without aligned energy, even the most ambitious goals begin to crumble. We all have a limited capacity for high-quality thinking in a day. If that capacity is consumed by emotional reactions, there's little left for creativity, planning strategy, or problem solving. Focus requires you to protect your mental environment the way you protect your physical space. Just like you wouldn't let someone throw garbage into your home, you shouldn't let every unfiltered emotion, every rude comment, or every piece of meaningless content take up space in your mind. That doesn't mean you block out the world or ignore important feedback. It means you develop a filter, one that screens out what's irrelevant and allows you to stay centered on your core direction. Reacting less doesn't mean you care less. It means you care more about your mission, your peace, your priorities. It means you're not willing to let everything and everyone hijack your focus. You start to see time as something sacred and attention as something that must be guarded. The ability to remain steady while the world pulls at you from all sides is not about being passive. It's about being anchored. When you are anchored, you don't chase after every noise. You don't run to explain yourself every time someone misunderstands you. You don't lose yourself trying to win every argument. You stay rooted in what matters. In the long run, success doesn't come from reacting fast. It comes from responding wisely. And wisdom takes stillness. It takes the discipline to pause, to think, to filter. Every time you choose not to react, you conserve energy. Every time you conserve energy, you give yourself the chance to invest it in something meaningful. That investment compounds over time into better work, deeper relationships, and a mind that is no longer scattered, but sharp. When you stop reacting to everything, you create space for clarity. And in that space, your greatest potential starts to unfold. Inner peace comes from self-regulation. It doesn't come from perfect conditions, a conflict-free environment, or the absence of stress. It comes from the ability to manage your internal world, even when the external world feels out of control. Many people chase peace by trying to fix everything around them. They want everyone to behave a certain way. They want their plans to go exactly right. They want life to cooperate with their expectations. But that kind of peace is fragile. It depends entirely on things you can't control. And when those things shift, as they inevitably do, your peace disappears with them. Real peace is built on something stronger, your ability to regulate your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors regardless of what's happening around you. Self-regulation is the practice of noticing what you feel without being dominated by it. It's the space between stimulus and response where you choose how to respond rather than react. It's what allows you to stay calm during confrontation, patient during frustration, and focused during chaos. Without this ability, emotions rule the moment. Anger speaks before you think. Anxiety dictates your decisions. Impulse overrides your better judgment. And as a result, your internal state rises and falls based on every small disruption that crosses your path. When you lack regulation, you become emotionally hijacked by whatever enters your space. But when you have it, you maintain stability, not because life is easy, but because you are anchored. Developing this kind of self-control doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It means learning to experience emotions fully, understand them clearly, and then move through them with intention. It's about replacing emotional autopilot with mindful choice. You feel the anger, but you don't lash out. You feel the fear, but you still take the next step. You feel the sadness, but you don't sink into hopelessness. This kind of regulation is a quiet strength. It doesn't draw attention, it doesn't need to be loud, but it changes the entire way you experience life. Instead of being constantly thrown off by circumstances, you become a steady force in your own journey. Self-regulation is also what protects your values when emotions tempt you to betray them. It's easy to act with kindness when people are kind to you. It's easy to stay patient when things are going well. But your character is tested when you're under pressure. That's when the discipline to stay grounded matters most. Inner peace is not just about feeling good. It's about knowing you're living in alignment with what you stand for, even when it's hard. That alignment builds trust with yourself. You start to believe in your own ability to navigate difficulty without crumbling or losing control. Every time you choose self-regulation over emotional reaction, you reinforce this trust. It might look like walking away instead of arguing. It might look like pausing to breathe before responding. It might look like recognizing that a thought is just a thought, not a command, not a truth, just a signal you can observe and respond to wisely. Over time, these small decisions build resilience. You begin to realize that your peace doesn't depend on anyone else changing. It depends on your own habits, how you think, how you respond, how you carry yourself through stress. Most people think they need more motivation to feel better. But in reality, what they often need is more emotional structure. They need a system that helps them manage themselves. They need tools like reflection, breathing, journaling, pausing, and planning. These aren't luxury habits. They're essential for mental balance, because without regulation, emotions can distort your perspective. A single moment of panic can make you abandon a goal. One wave of frustration can damage a relationship. One outburst of fear can sabotage an opportunity. But when you've trained yourself to regulate those emotions, you can see them, feel them, and still make decisions that reflect your long-term vision, not your short-term discomfort. Self-regulation also gives you space to process before acting, which creates emotional safety for others. People feel more at ease around those who are emotionally steady, not because they never feel anything, but because they don't make others responsible for their reactions. That steadiness becomes a gift, not just to yourself, but to the people you work with, live with, and lead. It creates a ripple effect. One regulated person can change the tone of a conversation. One steady leader can calm a whole team. One peaceful presence can shift the energy in a room. Inner peace is not luck, and it's not a passive experience. It is something you practice, build, and protect through your own decisions. Self-regulation is the mechanism by which you take back control of your emotional life. It's the skill that makes peace possible, not because the world becomes peaceful, but because you do. Not everything deserves your reaction. It sounds simple, but living by this principle requires strength, clarity, and discipline. In a world where people are quick to express every feeling, every opinion, and every reaction, the ability to hold back, to pause, to choose silence or stillness when provoked is not weakness, it's wisdom. Reacting to everything means giving every situation, every person, and every inconvenience access to your mind, your time, and your energy. But when you learn that not everything deserves a response, you begin to filter your focus. You stop handing over your peace to things that don't deserve it. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is instinctive, fast, emotional, often impulsive. Responding is deliberate. It comes after thinking. It's rooted in purpose. When you react to every comment, every disagreement, every piece of negativity, you surrender your stability. You allow someone else's behavior to dictate how you show up. But when you step back and choose what's worth your energy, you're not ignoring reality. You're protecting your growth. You're choosing where to invest your strength. That choice is not passive. It's powerful. It's a decision that reinforces your self-control when you realize that not every comment needs a reply, not every misunderstanding needs correction, and not every criticism requires a defense. You free yourself from a constant cycle of emotional entanglement. You stop needing to prove your point to people who aren't ready to listen. You stop explaining yourself to those who only seek to argue. You stop exhausting yourself on battles that serve no purpose. This doesn't mean you avoid conflict. It means you engage only when it's necessary, meaningful, and aligned with your values. You begin to see that silence isn't a retreat. Sometimes it's a strategy. Sometimes silence speaks louder than your words ever could. There's a kind of peace that comes from knowing who you are well enough that external noise doesn't shake you. That kind of peace is built over time through the consistent practice of self-restraint. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about your direction, your character, and your inner balance more than you care about temporary validation or emotional drama. You begin to ask better questions before responding. Does this help? Is this necessary? Will I regret giving my energy to this? Often, the answer leads you away from the reaction and back toward yourself. Every time you choose not to react, you strengthen your emotional muscle. You teach yourself patience. You give your mind a chance to stay clear instead of getting clouded with stress or anger. You create emotional space to think, to process, to act intentionally. And in that space, you find wisdom. You start to understand that the most powerful person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who doesn't flinch under pressure, who doesn't over-explain, who doesn't chase approval or attention. It's the person who chooses their responses with care, who saves their voice for when it matters most. People often confuse reaction with strength. But true strength lies in knowing when to walk away, when to disengage, when to let go. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to fight every battle that crosses your path. You don't need to prove yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. The more you grow, the more you realize that much of what once upset you no longer deserves that privilege. Growth allows you to see the difference between important and irrelevant, between what deserves your energy and what only drains it. Choosing not to react doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you manage it in a way that reflects maturity and alignment with your deeper goals. You can feel disappointed without reacting in frustration. You can feel insulted without lashing out. You can feel angry and still speak with grace. That's mastery. That's the kind of control that makes you dependable, respected, and unshakable. Because when you don't give your reaction to everything, you keep your power. And power, when held quietly, has the most impact. There's peace in protecting your energy. There's strength in knowing when to speak and when to remain still. And there's clarity in recognizing that your time and emotions are not cheap, they're valuable, they're sacred. And they're not meant to be spent on every trigger or every person who crosses your boundaries. When you choose not to react, you're not being passive, you're being intentional, you're choosing to invest your energy into what builds you, not what breaks your focus. That's how you grow. That's how you lead. And that's how you live with freedom. Not because the world gets quieter, but because you stop letting everything loud get inside. The true strength of a person lies not in how loudly they speak, how quickly they react, or how forcefully they respond, but in how calmly they choose, how wisely they think, and how deliberately they act. The essence of peace, clarity, and growth begins with understanding that you are in control of your inner world. When you take responsibility for your reactions, when you choose emotional discipline, when you protect your focus, regulate your emotions, and reserve your energy for what truly matters, you begin to live from a place of intention rather than impulse. You are no longer moved by noise, shaken by pressure, or distracted by every challenge. You become grounded, Not because life is easy, but because you've decided that nothing outside of you gets to control what's inside of you. And that decision changes everything. Don't let anything affect you unless you've first decided it's worth it. That's not just strength, that's leadership.